Can you feel it in the air? It's that special time when Scott Fish, Ryan McDowell, Bob Gilchrist, and John Bosch put together the world's largest fantasy football charity tournament, the Scott Fish Bowl. And after months of anticipation, drafts are set to kick off this weekend. And if you were lucky enough to get in, now you have to decide how to attack the unique scoring and lineup settings. Well, we're here to help you tonight on the All Out Blitz. Some people will tell you to play it safe, but we're here to tell you to go all out. Welcome to the All Out Blitz. I am your host, J.J. Wenner, and I am joined by my courteous co-host, Doug Orth. Let's get to it because I don't want to hear from Doug, and welcome in our guests. We are so excited to welcome two very special guests to the show tonight. First up, the godfather of fantasy, the man who has launched 1,000 careers and a few late-night fire alarms, Mr. Ryan Hallam. How are you doing, my friend?
Doing fantastic, man. It's thrilled to be on your show. As we've had many a beer over the FF Expo, it's good to get on the air with you guys and shoot it up a little bit.
One of the best in the industry, man. You know how much we all love you. And also, we would like to welcome our next guest. He's a senior writer for Dynasty Nerds, but most importantly, he's the creator and the captain of the SFB Hopefuls Chat, which is such a great place to be in. He has helped literally hundreds of people get into the tournament over the past few years. Mr. Jayson Snyder. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, guys. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for all that you do. We're coming, just so you know, behind the scenes at 6 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, there was just a SFB Live where how many hopefuls got in?
I think like 7. Yeah.
So it was a very, very exciting day. Now, before we get into strategy, let's pay some bills and get a word from our sponsors. We're not just a bunch of pretty faces here at IDP Plus. We have an entire suite of tools and rankings for both offense and defense. Plus, let's be honest, you get a whole lot more. You get us, right? That's pretty good. So right now, get your first month for just $1 with the promo code MOCKDRAFT. Head over to idpguys.org after the show to get ahead of your lazy league mates and start your march towards fantasy football greatness today with the promo code MOCKDRAFT. The link and details are in the show description. All right, gentlemen.
JJ, does that subscription also include the Game Changers with Wendy and Carla, or no?
No, that's a different. That's different. It's different website.
All right, sorry.
Right. Can we? We're the producer. Can we edit that out? Can we edit that out? They're going to take care of that on the back end.
I don't think they edit that out.
Thank you for plugging my girlfriend's show, though. Thank you.
Did you just say problem. Thank you for plugging your girlfriend?
We didn't have that many beers in Canada.
Wow. 3:30 and we're already off. 3 minutes and 30 seconds in and we're off the rails. All right.
Sorry.
Well, let's kick this off with a little SFB introduction, right? I want to know how many years you've been in SFB. Yeah, let's just start right there. Doug, how long have you been playing in the Scott Fish Bowl?
Yeah, I had to look this up. I've been in since SFB 7, so this is number 8 for me.
Number 8. That's impressive. Jayson.
So it's kind of it's a nebulous question, really, when you think about it. Because there's satellites and there's all kinds of other ways to participate. So I was doing satellites before I was even invited to be in the big main event. I did those, I think, 2 or 3 years, and then this is my 4th year in the main event. So that's one of the things I always try to counsel people on. People get dejected. I didn't get invited, and it's so competitive again. And I said, if you want to participate in Scott Fish Bowl, there's a way for you to participate in Scott Fish Bowl, whether you do the underdogs or the mirror leagues or the satellites or, like all the contests that Fantasy Cares runs, you can get involved and you can be a part of it. So don't just get so fixated on the main event. Get involved however you can, because they notice that stuff too, and it's to your benefit.
Yeah, they really do. I know in conversations they talk about how much they look at what you do in the space, right? Not just like what your name is, which is good. Ryan, how long have you been
And not begging. That I don't think that's
Yeah.
I was actually in the very first one when it was the Oasis League back in CBS. And then I took a fairly lengthy hiatus from the industry. And then I came back at Scott Fishbowl 9. So I've been 1, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. This is my 7th.
All right, a little math on the show. I like to see a peek behind the scenes of how you
if there were Scott Fishbowl IDs back then, mine would be in single digits, but
that would be awesome. That would be awesome. So this is my 2nd year. And I love the mirror leagues. I actually just signed into my first underdog draft ever to support SFB.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know what I'm doing, but I think we had a promo code. I think Drew, our buddy Drew Davenport, had an underdog promo last year. And so I signed up to support him and just never used my money.
I've done some of the props on there. I don't know that I've done too many drafts on there, but I've done with some reasonable success.
I'm gonna have to check that out this year.
Yeah.
So what division are we in? Jayson.
I'm in the much to my delight, I'm in the DeLorean division from Back to the Future, and I'm drafting in the number 5 draft slot.
Okay. Why did you choose the 5 slot?
Well, to be honest with you, I was looking for 6, but I was kind of hung up on the division so I got as close as I could to in the division that I wanted. And I just generally in this format, especially with the 3rd round reversal, I like to be near the middle, kind of buttress myself from runs or, things that are unexpected. If you're kind of towards that end, I know like if you go to the tail end, a lot of people advocate for being like 10, 11, 12, because you get that high pick in the 3rd round. But I just kind of generally I think it neutralizes that 3rd round reversal if you're kind of in the middle and you can kind of be in the flow. Plus, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about this over the course of the show, but so much of Scott Fishbowl is about engagement and, interacting with your league mates. And I just feel like I'm more a part of the action when I'm in the middle because I'm never too far from a pick. If I'm on the end, I could kind of tune out for a day because it's not coming to me for a while. And I don't like that. I honestly want to have to pay attention and want to be up on what's going on so that I feel like I'm more engaged.
It's a good point. Ryan.
I am in perhaps the greatest movie of all time, The Princess Bride. I'm in the Fezzik division. Honor old Andre the Giant there. And I am picking from the 11th exactly because of the 3rd round reversal. And I'd like to point out that I hate the 3rd round reversal. And I wish one day John Bosch would forget about the 3rd round reversal because I think it's one round. I'm not sure how it neutralizes the draft order or how there's been any sort of research that proves that draft order screws the person at the end, but it is what it is. But last year, it served me very well. Like, it was a huge quarterback run in the beginning. I went with Justin Jefferson, and then came back in the 2nd. Had Dak, 3rd round reversal. I had Cousins, and I was moving until Jefferson and Cousins both got hurt, and that pretty much ended my season. But I was doing very well, so I went again at the end to try to see if I could duplicate last year's half-year success anyway.
And Doug, where are you drafting?
Yeah, unlike these guys who got into movies and divisions that they've seen the movies or are fans of, I have no idea about Sergeant Sean Dingham, but I wanted to get into the Boston Live draft, and so therefore that was my avenue toward doing that. And I wanted the number 1 pick. At least I thought I wanted the number 1 pick. I signed up for this probably back in, I don't know, March or earlier April. I don't know when it was. I did the number 1 pick, but obviously I didn't have a strategy for it at that point. Now I'm kind of like it. I think it's a solid spot now, considering some of the guys I'm going to expect to be available at the 3-4 turn. And since I can't even tell you who I'm going to go with at number 1 yet. As I was doing the article, I was thinking, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to go with this guy, so I'm still not sure who I'm going with, but I do like the options, even without the 3rd and 4th round, even with the 3rd round reversal being what it is, and my not picking again after 2-12 until 3-12 and 4-1. So I think I can build a pretty strong. I think I can have a pretty good start in this quasi super flex league even with that.
I read somewhere that there was about 8 quarterbacks that averaged 20 points a game. I think there was 8 running backs that averaged 20. I couldn't remember. The article was so long. I can't remember what I read at the beginning by the time I got to the end.
You know what? I started that article too. I don't know if I'll finish it by the time we have the Boston live draft, but hopefully I'll get there.
Speaking of which, I have to get both of you guys to New York City one of these years for the live draft, please. I'd love to have you guys come in for that.
Coincident. Go ahead, Ryan.
No, I want you guys to come to the live draft down in New York City. Stop going to Boston.
Okay.
Well, I am in the McManus division, the McManus brothers. I got switched over from, I think, Dingham. I think I might have been in Dingham. I'm doing the Boston live draft. Mainly, though, Ryan, because that's where my kids live.
That's right.
So I go up there and I see them. However, as a teacher, I'm free in the summer. So when is the New York draft?
July 13th. It's not the same day as Boston. I do know that.
It's a week before. I have a concert that weekend.
Oh, well.
Damn,
but anyway, this great article was on it was FF Today that I read that really broke down the scoring system. I mean, I felt more educated after. I'm not sure who wrote it, but
well, coincidence of coincidences. I also did a Scott Fish Bowl 14 preview. So go ahead, and it might be on FF Today as well. But just.
It broke down the positions, how many guys per position, like how the author thought the draft would go, and I felt a little more prepared. In all honesty, though, seriously, we were making fun, but it really was really good. I did read it because I told JJ the other day, I'm like, kind of it's weird to go into this draft with a strategy because someone always does something crazy. The scoring system is bonkers, so like to try to go into it with some sort of plan is always difficult. But I did appreciate it, and especially like you brought in the kickers and the returnment. I thought you did a really job.
Yes, we pick on Doug because we love him, but that was one of those articles where I was like, oh, let me quick glance at this before the pod. And like 30 minutes later, I'm like, okay, like I have my like slide rule out, my abacus. I was
like, where are the pictures? I need pictures.
Yeah,
like
I put a
Jack
graph
Galifianakis at the casino in Hangover. Like,
I put a graph in there. Okay, come on now.
You did put a graph. All right. Well, talking about scoring, let's go over what the scoring is for the Scott Fish Bowl. So, passing, big difference. 1 point for every 50 yards. 6-point TDs, 2 point for 2-point conversions. That's normal. Rushing, kind of standard rushing, except you get 0.5 per first down. And it's a PPC league, which means you get 0.25 per rush attempt. So point per carry. I love point per carry. Receiving, same thing, pretty normal. 1 point for every 10 yards, 6 points, 2 points. And you get a 0.5 point per first down again. So rushing and receiving each receive a 0.5 point for a first down. Now, the PPR is a little bit different. So running backs, quarterbacks, and kickers get 0.5 per reception. Wide receivers get a full PPR, and tight ends get a 0.5 bonus. So they're at 1.5 PPR. Plus, tight ends get an extra point per first down. So they get 1.5 points for every first down. Now, maybe the biggest change, kickers are the same, 3.3 for every extra point. Then it's decimal scoring, so 0.1 for every 10 yards of a kick. So a 37-yarder will get you 3.7 points. But special teams, they get 10 points for any punt return or kick return for a TD, and then 1 point for every 5-yard for your returns. So, gentlemen, the two biggest changes are quarterbacks are devalued and returners are huge. What was your gut reaction, Jayson, to these changes in the scoring?
Well, it's funny because with this being a super flex format, or at least it has been for years, my strategy has always been like, I don't go into it with, as Ryan was alluding to earlier, I got to have this or I got to have that. But I do try to, within the first, say, 4 to 5 rounds, get those 2 quarterbacks, generally speaking, because they are so valuable. And you really kind of pay a price for your team if you don't acquire those 2 guys at the top of your draft board. I've seen many people fall into that pitfall. But this year, I don't know that I have any objection to putting a running back, a receiver, even a tight end in that super flex hole and being perfectly content with it, because the scoring is so balanced, if you will. I mean, I hate to use a kind of a hackneyed term, but it genuinely is balanced. And, I've done a couple mocks. I haven't done many, but I see a lot of people are kind of, I don't know if they're not familiar with the scoring yet, or if the ADP is kind of guiding them to a place that they're not wanting to be. But I see a lot of people kind of stuck in that mindset of like, I got to get my quarterbacks early. And I'm just like flying along, like I'll get a quarterback later, and I'm not committed to starting more than one. So I'm not really that worried about it. That really has dramatically changed my outlook or my strategy, I guess, or how I feel nervous as the draft board kind of unveils. I'm just kind of following the value and trying to be water, as they say, and going where the flow takes me,
Ryan, are you in the same camp?
I have to do a couple mocks before my draft comes along, kind of see where it's so hard though, because if your draft is going quarterback, it's hhard not to. You don't want to end up with Mac Jones. I know he's not starting, but he's the worst quarterback that came to my mind at the moment. As your second quarterback. As last few years, we see injuries really piling up. I don't want to go into it where if my starting quarterback goes down, I'm finished. So I'm a little more conservative that way. My biggest change to me, I think, is the double tight end premium now. Like when I play tight end premium, people always take tight ends before I was willing to take them, even with the extra bonuses. But now with an extra half for the receptions and the first down bonus, like I think you can't kind of punt that position towards the end of the draft anymore.
Now, Doug, to plug your article, your fantastic article, what are you thinking with the changes, especially like with the quarterback position?
Well, I think Jayson nailed it there. I know the last 2 years in Scott Fish that my downfall has been. I think I prioritized quarterback enough, but that having my second quarterback going down as early as he did, Aaron Rodgers last year, that pretty much sunk it. That was a good strategy. Unfortunately, 4 snaps in, But then I remember it was probably 3 years ago. Actually, I had aging Ben Roethlisberger, and that was fine to a degree. But again, we're talking different scoring and whatnot. I've been guilty of trusting. I don't know about trusting my gut, but hoping instead of planning at the quarterback position. One of the points I made in here was definitely, as Jayson alluded to, I want to have 2 quarterbacks at the end of 5 rounds, and maybe even probably after 4. With that said, it's the archetype of the quarterback that I'm looking for. I'm not looking for the passing quarterbacks. I'm looking for I would love to have Jaden Daniels as my QB2. I think I mentioned that in the article. Would love to have him as my QB2. I know there's going to be peaks and valleys, but those peaks are going to be incredibly high, and those valleys with him probably aren't going to be that low. So, in regards to the biggest changes I see is the return yardage. And JJ, I know you've been in some return yardage leagues. I haven't been in many since. I want to say maybe the second or third year I started playing. It was the last time I was in a return yardage league. And we'll probably talk about this later in the show. Last year in this scoring, Rashid Shaheed was number 27 player overall. After the first month, he was the number 2 player overall, just to give you some sense of what a returner can do in this league. And I'll just throw this one other nugget out at you just to give you a kind of an idea. I'm going to take this straight from the article. How important is the individual kickoff punt return scoring this year? In week 14 against the Browns last year, Dameon Pierce ran 3 times for 6 yards and caught 1 pass for 10 yards and a first down. So that ended up being something like 3 points 3 fantasy points total. However, he amassed 174 kickoff return yards and ran one back for a touchdown, allowing him to score 48.15 points that week. Did nothing on offense. He won you that week. So that's how important. Now, granted, you're not predicting guys returning kicks or punts for touchdowns, but having you spoke about the yardage earlier. I mean, it's insane how much that's going to boost the bottom line, and that's one of the reasons I would have never thought about putting kick and punt returners at the bottom of my article if I didn't think they were that important. And I'll probably be loading up on those guys, hoping that the rest of my draft room doesn't realize how important that is, and hopefully taking, anywhere, probably starting as early as the 10th round, and maybe sprinkling 4 or 5 of those guys at the back end of my draft.
Now, another change this year that I think has kind of gone under the radar. You guys could tell my radar is not that strong. The fact that you only have to start one at each position, right? If I'm not mistaken, last year, like you had to start 2 running backs, you had to start 3 wide receivers.
Yep.
And this year you only have to start 1. So Ryan, how will that change your approach?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think you go into drafts, and as you're building your roster, you're like, okay, well, this is who I'm planning on starting. And maybe 7th round, you need to grab that second running back. Well, I mean, now maybe you don't. I know clearly you need more than 1 running back in your roster, but outside of once you get past the bell cow guys, like like you said, is a quarter point per carry. A guy's getting 7 carries in a game. That's not really helping you very much unless he breaks one for a touchdown. And they're only have half-point PPR, where wide receivers have full-point PPR. So I think there'll be, or there should be, fewer dart throws for running backs later in the draft, in my opinion.
Now, Jayson, you had said how you're going to wait a little bit on QB, right? Like this allows you not to necessarily push like we used to, or at least last year. Does it change who you're going for, though? Like outside of QB with the positional requirements, are you looking to load up on wide receivers, or is it just going to be BPA?
I think I just want to find the value. I mean, I know that sounds kind of generic and it sounds, tired, but it's really the truth, especially with the scoring set the way that it is. And, just to kind of follow up on some of the points that Doug was making, I think your true goal in this player field for this tournament is finding guys that even if they contribute somewhat on offense and they're a designated returner for their team, those are the guys that you want. Because some of the guys that are going to be just strictly special teams players, you're going to take a risk putting that guy into your lineup because you could get a 0 or you could get a 50 burger and you have no idea what you're going to get out of those guys. But if that guy is going to get 10 carries or he's going to get 6 targets in a game and he's a returner for his team, now we got something, because we got a little bit of a floor there where he's going to contribute on offense, and maybe he's going to give you 5, but at least it's not a donut. You're going to get something out of that guy, and he's got a way higher ceiling because he's involved in the return game. I think what really makes also the return stats being incorporated this year interesting is that the NFL has changed their rules on kickoff returns this year.
Right.
So they've made it so much easier for guys to get into the end zone and to, contribute significantly. I've heard a lot of conjecture about NFL teams using traditional starting offensive players as return specialists now, just because the rules are so conducive to those guys, and their talent. That used to be a throwaway position, to put somebody back there who we can afford to have get hurt, and who cares?
Yeah.
Well, the teams aren't looking at it that way anymore. So it's really challenging, because with these drafts occurring, starting this week and into like the beginning of July, we haven't seen any camp. We haven't seen any kind of indication of who are those guys that are going to be back there in week 1 that are return. So if you take a guy from last year and you go, oh, he's a returner for his team, he may not be the returner for that team this year. So I really think when you look at those guys, like week 1 waivers are going to be bananas, because everybody's going to, the cards are on the table for the NFL at that point. And that's the guy that they're putting out there when there's a kickoff. And that's the guy I got to get that nobody even thought about looking at when we were drafting. And that's where, you're going to really have to manage your fab and all that kind of stuff, because those guys could be difference makers. And right now they're kind of anonymous.
And I think that's going to be the biggest possible mistake is assuming returners. I think people are going to make. That's why I understand all your points, and they definitely all make sense. But, man, that's can be a very fluid position. And you could draft a guy who you think is going to be the returner, or maybe he's the returner week one, and then all of a sudden, then you're left with a guy who's doing nothing on offense and not returning, and
or they fumble one punt.
Yeah, and then
now they're no longer the returner.
I know, and I don't remember where this came from, but I remember that Justin Fields might return kicks. I still, even with the changed rules, I don't know that they're going to throw out highly important skill position guys to return kicks. I would be surprised. I wonder how many more kick returns we're going to see. Obviously, they changed the rules to make it more conducive, but we'll see. It also puts the kick, coverage way closer. So I don't know that we're going to see a huge. We're going to see. I mean, this is they took from the XFL, and we'll see what happens. But I don't want to put too much of my draft into changes with But I think Jason's completely right. I think early season waivers are going to be bananas.
Right. And just to follow up with what Ryan just said too, I think it's also important to note, I don't know that teams are going to take full-time starting offensive players and put them back there as full-time returners. But if you're late in the game and you're down a score, I could see teams going, okay, I know you're our starting talent and, this is risky, but we're throwing you out there because, one to the house could change the dynamic of this game. So that changes both that player's value, and it also changes the guy that you thought was the returner that's now getting pulled when it's crunch time. Okay, we're taking you out. We're putting the guy that we really think can break one, because we don't care if he gets hurt at this point. We need this win. So I'm just kind of curious. It's really hard to kind of get your crystal ball out and forecast what are all of these return yards going to look like. That's why I think as the early season, as I said, breaks down, you're going to really have to have your head in the game there and figure out, is this guy sustainable? Is he, as Ryan said, is he going to be the returner for the entire season just because he ran one back in week one and his number's high? Do you want to drop $80 on him? Somebody's going to do that. And I don't know if you want that to be you.
Yeah, we've definitely seen, Tyreek Hill return a punt, Deebo Samuel return,
Sure.
Yeah, if that's going to happen more this year, we'll see. It's scoring changes on Scott Fishbowl coupled with rules changes in the NFL, and it's going to be really interesting. And that's a huge strategy. Either going to bomb or bust. Well, those things are both those. Bomb and bust is the same. Boom and bust is what I meant to say. Could really, really hurt, boost your team, or it really could hurt you. So.
And it's also important to remember what made a good returner last year under those rules is not what's going to make a good returner under these rules. It's two different skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
So going along with what you both said, investing in guys who did really well last year.
Yeah.
That might not be what they want.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a running play this year. I think you're going to see bigger returners than you did in the past. But
I would also say too, unless you're a guy like a Devin Hester type that's always reliable as a returner. I don't have the stats. I'd have to do more of a deep dive on this, but my inclination is those guys are kind of like kickers are. One season that guy's the number one kicker in the entire league, and then the next year he's 15th in the entire. And you go, well, what happened to this guy? It's so dependent on the team and the season and injuries and all that kind of stuff. So just because a guy lit the league on fire from a return standpoint last year, I don't know that I feel comfortable counting on that repeating, as a follow-up this year.
All right, gentlemen. Well, as we start talking about SFB drafts, it's important to remember that it is draft season, and there is nothing better than a live draft. So right ahead now, get ahead of the game with Trophy Smack's gorgeous draft boards, complete with player stickers so deep.
How deep, JJ?
So deep, Doug, you couldn't possibly need them all. And for the first time, Trophy Smack has an IDP expansion pack for all of us defensive degenerates who play IDP. So no more scribbling names on blank stickers. Go to Trophy Smack Get the only draft board that meets all of your needs. Check out the link in the show notes and get yours today. All right, gentlemen, we had a lot of talk in the first half, but now we have to start giving some actionable advice. We have to start talking about our strategies. So, Doug, as the first overall pick, you get to talk about your strategy first. So, is there something you're going to look to do in your first 5 rounds?
Well, I mean, as I was debating this here a couple weeks ago when I started the article, and I'm hearing you guys talk now, I mean, I think I'm leaning in one direction. I was thinking CMC first, and I was thinking, hey, you know what? I'd rather have the quarterback built and then take my chances. And then I think I'm swinging back to CMC. Anyway, the beauty of the starting lineup setup in this league is that there's no perfect way to draft a team, at least in the beginning. And that's awesome, I think. I think securing 2 very good elite quarterbacks and 1 stud tight end will help the cause, but the first few rounds, in my opinion, is going to be almost entirely about gaining positional advantages somewhere. And the more positional advantages, obviously, the better. That isn't any different than trying to win a typical league. That's point number 1. Point number 2, I think that the thing I'm about to share with you, and you kind of almost need to have the article with you to help illustrate what I'm about to say. But having the 1 quarterback, the 1 running back, basically the onesies everywhere, I decided I would look at it by rounds 1 through 10 and look at what the average point total for the top 1 through 12 players, top 13 through 24. So basically building a draft off the way that the top 120 finished in each of the last 2 years. And I was blown away when I thought about it that way. In 2022, you needed over 400 points from your first round pick to be in that 1 through 12 area. That was the average, 408.1. 2023 is 378.2. And as I got to thinking about it, because this draft and this build is basically onesies all the way through. Oh, look at you.
That's called preparation right there.
So I wanted to, I think it's a wonderful idea to think of each pick that you make. Are you meeting that average or bettering it? Are you getting ahead of that average? So let's just combine the two for this year and say, what is that, 390, roughly 390? But I'm shooting for 400. Shooting for 400 for my first round pick. Shooting for 320, 330 for my second round pick, so on and so forth. 300 from the third round guy. Point being is, if I can have roughly 1,000 to 1,100 points build up, and the rest of my competition is thinking receiver, pocket quarterback, I might be 200 points ahead of him before we're even out of round 3. That to me is a wow. And so then you got the rest of the league chasing you while they're trying to build their typical build, maybe 0 running back, maybe bully tight end, whatever. Thinking of it from each round as trying to meet a point total or exceed a point total, and then building on that advantage as you go along, I think is going to be huge in this competition.
So, based on what Doug is saying, Jayson, do you think it makes more sense to find projections that you trust and draft by projected points?
I think what I generally like to do here is I like to look at, there's spreadsheets out there available. I know I have the data, and it shows basically this scoring system that we're using this year with last year's data. And not that you can necessarily count on, replication. I don't look at the names. I look at where, what kind of groupings did we have? And it's very similar to the approach that Doug's using. But just to give you a feel for what I'm talking about, I've been in a lot of mocks, as I said, where guys are going receiver heavy early. And there was only 7 receivers last year that scored an average of 20 points a game or higher. Now contrast that to running backs. So there was 13 running backs that scored 20 points a game or higher. There were 9 quarterbacks, and there were only 4 tight ends. So I don't know. To me, then you shape your strategy around that. Some guys like to go for the scarcity. They go, there was only 4 guys that were 20 or above in tight ends. I got to get a tight end so that I get a positional advantage over everybody else. That's entirely reasonable. Other people go, oh, I'm going to load up on running backs because they're all scoring 20 points. That's reasonable to me as well. I just want to get in those groupings, and I feel a lot. I guess when I talk about running backs, I said 13. That was the most of any position that had, that was stacked with top 20 points or more per game. I want to feel like I'm gonna. I don't know that I'm as accurate as many guys have the bravado in this industry and say I know exactly which 5 guys are going to be the top. If I've got 13 shots in the running back column versus 4 in the tight end column, I feel like my probability is a lot better if I go running back early that I'm going to hit one of those guys that's going to score 20 or more points a game. Yeah. I really got to thread the needle to get one of those 4 guys at tight end. And we know the names. Kelsey's probably one of the 4. It's not really rocket science, but frankly, I'm okay with whatever falls to me. I just want to make sure that I'm aware of what the scoring system looks like with a real data set. So that's where I start my strategy.
To further your point just a little bit more, I'm sure Sam Laporta is one of those 4, and there was no one thinking about him. Exactly. So now, if there was 4 and one was guy you didn't expect at all, now you're looking at 3 probably of what you're thinking. So I think that narrows it. Before you ask me, JJ, about strategy, I'm just going to come out and say it.
Hey, Ryan, what do you think about the SFB14 strategy?
I appreciate it. Here's the thing that always drives me nuts every year that you hear around this time. Well, you got to do something different. You got to do something crazy. You got to win this tournament with so many people. You have to be out of the box. No, you don't. Mm-mm. That's stupid. Unless your crazy ass strategy works somehow. Don't do something. You know what you got to do? Pick the best players that stay healthy and perform. You don't have to pick 4 running backs in a row or 3 tight ends in a row. That never works. No, I had a guy in my league pick 3 tight ends, and like 2 of them were hurt in the first 3 weeks. Like, there goes your strategy. Nope. So don't just think because it's 4,000 people that you got to do something stupid or crazy, because you don't, and that never works. And the person who does that is never at the end. So don't fall victim to this. We've got to do something different because there's so many people in it. Nope. I was doing great last year until injuries hit me, and I just regular everyday players. I didn't do anything crazy. I tried to build a pretty balanced roster. I think that's the best way to do it. Where you do it in which round, you could be, all your guys' data points, which are all very viable. But these people who go in and have to do something crazy, you blow yourself up before you even start.
Yep. And there is a point, Ryan, where I can understand when you have to differentiate yourself if you want to win the overall. But you still have to get to the playoffs.
Yeah.
And for most of the season, you're competing against 11 other teams, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And unless you beat those 11, you don't get to see everybody else. So crazy, fine. Like, have at it. Like, I'm not going to speak down about anybody who comes up with a strategy that is well above my comprehension. It's not hard to do. But you still have to beat 11 other people in a regular fantasy football league in order to get to the playoffs, to even have a shot. Mm-hmm. So get there first. Because I didn't make the playoffs last year. I was doing fine, man, until Arthur Smith went all Bijan and freaking playing for like 10 weeks. That son of a...
I did the very definition of backing into the playoffs. I was like maybe at 8 or 10-0, and then I hit a rash of injuries, and then I was only in because I had gotten off to such a good start, and I could not have been out any faster in the first round.
I think Jayson must have done well because he's the one that hasn't told us his sob story about
No, I was viable to the playoffs until the last week of the regular season and lost my matchup and missed the playoffs. But that's a jumping off point for what I wanted to say here, which is not only, JJ, you make a good point. You have to win your division first, but you don't even have to win your division because of all of the, weird points things that Scott does to qualify for the play. If you're above the median and if you're there were teams that were below 500 and they're winning percentage and qualified for the playoffs last year just based on points, like their point scoring average. And so to the point that Ryan made earlier, just make your best team. Like, don't go out and try to be, oh, I'm going to reinvent the wheel. I'm going to do something crazy, because you know what crazy gets you? You're out. And the fun of Scott Fishbowl, I just told you I was in it until the last week of the regular season. I enjoyed every week of that season because I was in it. If you're out after 4 weeks, it's dreadful, because really all you're doing is playing spoiler to everybody else. And this is not the kind of tournament where you want to feel like you're in a spoiler role, because maybe I'm projecting, but I genuinely want everybody to succeed. I think it's fun. It's for charity. It's about community, the whole thing. And so if I'm reduced to, I just got to screw up somebody else's season now because mine's down the toilet, that's a miserable way to go through a season of Scott Fishbowl. I don't want to do that. I want to be a part of it for the whole thing. So don't go, some harebrained scheme and you're out, at the end of, you're sitting there at the end of September and you're not a contender anymore. That's no fun.
It's only so much fun to go on Twitter and be like, look what I did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that lasts for about 2 days.
Dumbass.
Good for you.
Good for you. That's right. Good for you.
Oh, good for you. All right,
Yes.
Gentlemen. So let's talk about the return rule. Let's go back there, right? Return points. Doug, you mentioned Rashid.
Rashid. But I've got a handful more if you want to. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, I want to know who are some of our sleeper. That's a loose term. Our sleeper return guys who might get a little value, and I'm going to go first because I never go first. Somebody who I'm keeping an eye on, of course, for my beloved Jets, is Xavier Gipson. So last year, he finished the year in this scoring as wide receiver 34. Again, he finished as wide receiver 34 because he was a steady receiver the whole year. He wasn't playing a lot of offensive snaps until the tail end of the season, about week 11. So from week 11 until the end of the year, he was wide receiver 12 in the NFL. The Jets have already said that the plan is that he's going to be the wide receiver 2. They're increasing his role. He's going to be playing in the slot full time. And I think this sort of falls into what we were saying might be a little bit of a cheat code. The return guy who also does play a role on the offense. So Xavier Gipson is somebody I'm keeping my eye on. Anybody else? Jayson, do you have somebody you're eyeballing?
As much as I hate to say it, as a dyed-in-the-wool Eagles fan, KaVontae Turpin from the Cowboys is definitely a guy.
Yeah.
He kind of came out of nowhere just as a special teams player last year. I have to think that they're probably going to be looking to incorporate him more into their offensive plans. And just like we talked about, any guy that can get some snaps. I don't need him to be featured. I just need him to get a couple first downs, maybe a couple catches. I'm in, because that guy gives you so much potential as a returner. It's just you want those guys that are also part of their offense. So he's a guy that I wouldn't mind. And I don't know when you get into your real draft how many of your competitors are going to be savvy on these special teams guys. But one thing I will tell you too, from a mock standpoint, I've done a couple. Most people just fill them out and they run them to 15 rounds. But I've started a couple and I've had them go the full 22 that Scott Fishbowl goes. You start getting into like 18, 19, 20, it's thin. So I'm like, that's a great place to take a shot on one of these guys, because you know what? Then they're just your first drop when you come to week 1 if they don't pan out. Don't take a guy in round 12 when there's real competition or guys that might contribute on offense. But if KaVontae Turpin is there and it's round 20 and I'm looking at him or Jeff Wilson or some guy like that, yeah, give me Turpin all day, because I think his upside is so much greater.
He was the MVP of the USFL in 2022. Very dynamic. I believe it was for the New Jersey Generals. I can't remember what team he played for, but he's freaking awesome. Like, I was surprised Dallas didn't use him more last year in the passing game, considering who their receivers are for their first couple.
Right.
I really do think that he's going to get some more snaps this year, and that was exactly who I was going to say.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. But I pulled up Doug's article real quick, and then I went right back to Denver with Marvin Mims. So we'll see with Judy out of there if he can do something, since he really did nothing last year, and if he is also returning kicks, that's somebody who could be getting snaps and also returning kicks.
So Marvin Mims, Doug.
Yeah, I had a handful in the article. I want to refer back to what something Jayson said earlier. And I mentioned this in the article, that a lot of these return jobs are won in preseason or in training camp. So just because I have a chart of these guys, there's by no means, by no means, this is what it is now. This is our lads, and but the thing I do, the reason I posted this is because there's a pretty good chance at least 50 to 75% of these names are right. It's going to be the other 25 that either make it look very prescient on my part, or thanks a lot for your help.
We're going to post your name every time I see someone comment. If someone was in your article and they're bad mouthing, I'm like, you thank Doug Orth.
So,
hey, Doug, why is that guy returning this kick?
That's right. But
where's Jimmy Smith?
The reason I wanted to bring this up was Jayson touched on this earlier, and I touched this on this in the article. I think
it's a lot of touching.
Yeah, it's a lot of touching. Easy, no cops, none of that. Okay, but so the guys I want to be targeting after, say, round 10 to 22 are these guys. And I'm going to list off the ones I have in the article: Khalil, Shakir, Marvin Mims, Jaleel McLaughlin, Jaden Reed, Josh Downs, Demario Douglas, Shaheed we talked about earlier, and Ty J. Spears. These are all guys that are going to probably have some kind of role on offense. And in the cases of like McLaughlin and Spears, they may get 10 plus touches on a fairly regular basis. Now, if you're going to tell me I can get anywhere from 50 to 125 return yards depending on the week, or, they may not get anything, but at least they're giving you that floor. Now, if they give you that return yardage, holy cow! Now you got Spears, who was going to give you 12 points in a given week. Now he's giving you 38. That kind of thing. So those are the names. Now, a lot of those guys aren't going to be around that much past round 10, especially with the hype that guys like McLaughlin are getting right now. But Mims will be there later. Demario Douglas will probably be there a little bit later, but those are guys I'm kind of advocating. If by the time we draft him, you and I draft him, Boston JJ, we're going to have a Scott Fish ADP, and I'm going to be those names that I just gave off listed off there. Those guys I'm probably going to be targeting at least one round above ADP, if not two. I'm going to want Spears on my team. I know that. And regardless of whether or not he returns, that's returning is just a bonus. I'm going to want McLaughlin on my team for the same reason.
So, I wanted to make a good follow up on that point that Doug just made too, because we are on the IDP plus air. And one aspect of this that I haven't heard anybody talk about, but I think that bears some researching, is go look at the defenses in the league that you think are going to be god awful this year. Those are the returners that you want, because they're going to give up volume-wise more touchdowns than some of the more stifling defenses are, and that's just more opportunities for those guys to get their hands on the ball. Don't go for a team that has don't go for the 49ers returner, because they're not going to give up a lot of touchdowns, and you're going to be sitting there going, why doesn't this guy score? Well, because he doesn't get his hands on the ball. They're not giving up a lot of scores in their games. Go find some. Go find the Panthers or somebody like that. That's the guy you want. And even if it's a no-name guy that you've never heard of, just volume-wise, he's going to get more yards. He's going to get more opportunities.
That's actually a fantastic point that I had never thought of.
That is awesome. That's great. Yeah.
But wouldn't good defenses also have more punt returns?
They will, but I'm talking more. I'm more focused on the kick returns, and with the changes to the kickoff return rule, I just feel like those guys are going to be so much more valuable because it's so much easier to contribute and potentially even get into the. I mean, that was the whole reason behind that change, is they wanted to goose the kickoffs because nobody was getting into the end zone. And it was a dead play. The kickers were just kicking it out of the end zone every play, and it was boring. So they wanted to create more excitement out of it.
So and I want to combine the both. Bad defense, you want the kick returners. Good defenses, you want the punt returners. Yeah, because the punt return usually average like 12, 13. So if he returns 7 punts in a game, you're looking at, maybe 14, 15 points just off punt returns. So, yeah, I think it's important to think about defenses in both ways. So, kick in.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair.
Sorry, Doug.
Mm-hmm.
Doug?
Yeah, I think Brian kind of made my point there. I can expand on it a little bit, but I think at least with punt returns, the average punt return is going to go, 8-9 yards, the average kickoff return. And we haven't seen what the new kickoff returns, but just like Jayson said, they're trying to goose the kickoff return. So if we're getting, I think on the high end, we'd be looking at, on the high end, it'd be 25, but let's just assume 20. Let's just assume 20 yards on a typical kickoff return. They're encouraging kickoff returns, so now we should see more of them. Mm-hmm. So if that's the case now, and kickoff return, so just what I said based off the averages, it's going to be easier to get kickoff return yardage than it is punt return yardage, and that's something I hadn't thought about yet. But so if you have a team, if your guys are facing a defense that's prone to get into shootouts, or facing an opponent that is prone to get into shootouts, you may have close to 100 free yards. I don't want to say free as in free, but you might. So that there's your 20-point week from the returner just because of the team he's playing on.
So interesting. That's Scott Fish. He always gets us.
He's diabolical. Let's be
honest. He really is.
I mean, there's no chance he's watching this, at least not 52 minutes in. So can we just talk about Scott Fish?
I mean, it's also not live, so he's definitely not watching it right now.
And we're like, he can't take our spots, right?
No, I don't think so. I don't think he would take any of our spots.
Okay.
Hey, I already paid for my ticket. He's not taking it. Sorry.
I'll pull the whole New York thing out if he tries.
Oh man,
I just don't show up. I got all the draft boards. I got all the draft boards at my house. The good thing they can just write everybody's name on the wall.
I think Jason's safe too. JJ, I think it's you and I that we have to worry. These guys do too much for Scott Fish. We're just
there's plenty of time to replace us before.
Yeah, we're slackers.
July 21st. We're the last draft, right?
Yep,
I think so. Yeah.
It's going to be interesting just to see the difference in strategy at our event versus who's going first. Vegas this weekend?
Yes, I believe so.
Like, it's a huge difference. Oh, and by the way, Doug, I told you they switched my division. And yes. I noticed our buddy Leo now is in my, I'm like, really? Like, I literally, when I went to Boston, I was like, I'm not going with Doug and I'm not going with Leo. Like, I'll hold my own here.
Guys, in case Leo Pasiga, Siga FF, if you're not familiar, he's a really sharp dynasty mind. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not, but
oh yeah,
all right,
yeah.
Writes for Fighting Chance Fantasy, or has?
Yeah,
hasn't everybody?
Oh,
just wait till I get it back again. Any day now.
You let us know. All right, well, gentlemen. I think we've covered everything. I think if you've listened to this up until this point, you are ready to dominate the Scott Fish Bowl. No, wait.
I mean, I feel
one of us.
I feel worse now than I did when I came on. Now I'm like, geez, there's so much more to consider than I was thinking about before. So
when I invited Ryan on, Ryan said, he was like, I haven't thought about strategy at all. And I was like, yeah, either have I. So we were both just sitting here,
my mind for the last hour,
writing notes down for the past 40 minutes. Like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I thought. All right, well, gentlemen, it is time to say goodbye. So let the people know where they can find you and any final thoughts that you may have. Jayson, you're up first.
Sure, you can find me. I mean, first of all, my Twitter handle's in the banner there, so you can just dial me up if we're coming into draft season, even if it's outside of Scott Fish Bowl and you just want some thoughts or someone to bounce someone off of. I'm always there. I'm happy to talk to you. And obviously you can find my work on dynastynerds.com. I have a couple articles out right now about Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. We'll be doing an Eagles preview in the coming month. So you can see where my allegiances lay. But I'm happy to discuss my work or anything that you guys have going on a personal level. So just hit me up.
I'm having a little bit of trouble with my wife right now. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, hit me up. Sure.
I mean, my Twitter is also there at Fighting Chance. Not really doing any content. So when I do podcasts like this now, I like to plug my friends since there's nowhere to find anything that I'm doing. So on top of these fine gentlemen that invited me on the show, always find Drake Fantasy, who's new morning host on Sirius XM. Mauricio Gutierrez is one of the best out there. Drew Davenport, all of our friends that we see at Canton. Find all of them on Twitter. Find what they're doing. The Auction Brief podcast. Brian's on Sirius. Mauricio's all over the place. So I'm not really doing anything content-wise right now. So find my friends. They're pretty awesome.
All right, Doug.
Oh, also buy a t-shirt from Casey Kasem on Sunday_Dreamers on Twitter. I don't have it on right now, but I have one. They're awesome.
I have one.
She's awesome. So please, Sunday_Dreamers.
Which one did you get? I want to pet all the dogs and play all the fantasy football.
The one I got too. My wife's the president of the local SPCA, so we're dog people. So as soon as I saw that, I'm like, I gotta have that.
Yeah, Gots to. Doug.
Jayson, first of all, Jayson, I know JJ's going to get around to thanking both of you. Jayson, thank you for your time and insight. Just the fact that you were able to touch on some, I know, points that I didn't get to in my, 4,000 words, almost 5,000 words. So thank you for joining us, Ryan. Thank you for being you, and thank you for everything that you do in the community. You see my Twitter handle. And we've been talking off and on about the article, the SFB 14 preview called Gun Fishing. It's on the site on FF Today right now. That's all I'm going to say. JJ.
Well, I'm at JJ Wenner on Twitter. Find my handle right there. Thank you, Ryan, Jayson, for coming on. Ryan and Jayson are two of the best people I know in this industry. Anytime you see them interacting, they're doing something for somebody else. Right? And that's what you want to look for in this world, are people who are always helping someone else. It's never about Ryan. It's never about Jayson. It's always about their friends and who they want to help. So thank you. Kudos to both of you. Thanks to Doug, who only cares about himself. No, I'm kidding. Doug's the best. Thank you for all your work. Read his article. It made me smarter.
Start it now, though. Start it now
because you're going to need a little bit of time. Thank you to everybody at IDP Plus for their work on producing the pod. You can catch me on the Rider Dynasty podcast Friday with Jameson and Joe. And then next week, Doug and I will be back to get into some sort of trouble again. So thank you for tuning in. And remember, when in doubt, go all out. Boat drinks, my friends. Boat drinks.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.